For decades, Will Smith was Hollywood's safest brand. He represented family values, discipline, and mainstream success without scandal. That image survived box office failures, personal confessions, and even public embarrassment. But recently, a different narrative has begun circulating online, one driven by claims, interviews, leaked conversations, and repeated warnings that were ignored for years. At the center of this renewed attention is 50 Cent, a figure known for speaking loudly when powerful people would rather stay quiet. According to circulating claims, 50 Cent has drawn attention to what critics describe as a disturbing mentorship culture, allegedly tied to Will Smith, Diddy, and young men whose careers later collapsed. These allegations are not new, but the names involved Jaguar Wright and August Alsina have forced the conversation back into the spotlight. Why 50 Cent's voice changed the conversation? 50 Cent's reputation as an industry disruptor is well-earned. He has a long history of exposing what he calls hypocrisy and exploitation behind celebrity images. When he began referencing Will Smith again, many dismissed it as trolling. But the attention stuck because it connected dots that audiences had already seen separately. Screenshots, interviews, and archived clips resurfaced, creating a timeline that felt less random and more coordinated. According to commentators, 50 Cent didn't introduce new allegations so much as amplify existing ones that had been ignored when they came from less influential voices. That amplification forced viewers to re-examine stories that once sounded unbelievable but now appeared uncomfortably consistent. The rise and collapse of Jaguar Wright. Jaguar Wright's story is often cited as the most tragic example. After skyrocketing to fame through Empire, he was celebrated as a breakout star with enormous potential. Behind the scenes, however, his life reportedly unraveled. According to claims repeated by multiple commentators, Wright was introduced to powerful figures through industry mentorship, a term that now carries darker implications. Jaguar Wright has repeatedly alleged that both Diddy and Will Smith played roles in Wright's downfall, claiming exploitation rather than guidance. Observers point to Wright's social media behavior, legal troubles, and career disappearance as evidence that something went deeply wrong. While none of these claims have been proven in court, the pattern has raised serious questions about how young talent is handled once it enters elite circles. Jaguar Wright's warnings that went unheard. Jaguar Wright has been one of the loudest voices making these allegations, long before they were trending topics. For years, she claimed that Hollywood mentorship programs were fronts for manipulation and abuse. Her warnings were largely dismissed as bitterness or mental instability. But as similar accusations surfaced against Diddy, audiences began revisiting her earlier statements. Wright has alleged that Will Smith's involvement was not accidental and that trusted assistants and insiders had first-hand knowledge. She claims to have been told directly about inappropriate behavior involving young male artists. Again, these are allegations, but their persistence has forced many to ask why so many stories sound alike despite coming from different people. August Alsina and the entanglement that changed everything. August Alsina's involvement with the Smith household became public in 2020, shocking fans who once saw Will and Jada as Hollywood's model couple. Alsina claimed he entered a relationship with Jada with Will's blessing, a statement that shifted public perception overnight. While the focus remained on marital boundaries, critics argue the deeper issue was power imbalance. Alsina later described emotional damage and exploitation, saying he gave himself fully to the relationship and lost himself in the process. To skeptics, this aligned with claims that young men were drawn into environments they couldn't safely escape. The entanglement didn't prove wrongdoing, but it revealed a dynamic that made earlier allegations harder to dismiss. According to critics, the term mentorship became a shield for inappropriate access. Young artists seeking guidance were allegedly brought into private spaces under the promise of career advancement. Commentators argue that the consistent pattern initial support, followed by psychological decline, points to exploitation rather than coincidence. The accusation is not simply about sexuality, but about power, control, and consent within unequal relationships. Supporters of Will Smith argue that mentorship has always been part of Hollywood culture and that failures happen for many reasons. Critics counter that too many careers ended the same way to ignore the possibility of abuse. The role of assistants and insiders. Much of the controversy stems from statements allegedly made by former assistants and insiders who claim to have witnessed inappropriate situations. Interviews describing encounters between Will Smith and other men spread rapidly online. Legal threats reportedly followed, but lawsuits did not materialize. To critics, Silence after public threats raised suspicion. To defenders, it proved the claims lacked evidence. Still, the rapid response to suppress interviews suggested fear of reputational damage. Whether true or false, these moments shifted public trust and encouraged speculation about what powerful people are able to keep hidden. Any discussion of these allegations inevitably includes Diddy, whose legal troubles revived interest in Hollywood's hidden culture. Former associates described overlapping social circles where boundaries blurred. Some claimed that Will Smith and Diddy were closer than previously acknowledged. Others insist their relationship was superficial. What cannot be denied is that multiple accusers place both names in the same environment. Critics argue that when similar accusations repeatedly point to the same group, coincidence becomes less convincing. 50 Cent's text messages and public taunts. 50 Cent added fuel to the fire by sharing screenshots of conversations with Will Smith, framing them as concern but reading as confrontation. The messages referenced Jada's public admissions and questioned Will's tolerance of humiliation. While not evidence of misconduct, the decision to post them publicly suggested that 50 Cent wanted attention on the issue, not privacy. Supporters saw it as accountability. Critics saw opportunism. Either way, it ensured the topic stayed visible. Social media response has been deeply divided. Some believe Will Smith is being unfairly targeted due to association and rumor. Others argue that powerful figures are rarely exposed without reason. Fans point out Will's long career without formal accusations. Skeptics counter that influence often prevents accountability. The debate reflects a broader reckoning with celebrity worship and the willingness to believe victims only after patterns become impossible to ignore. Power, silence, and the cost of speaking out. One recurring theme in these stories is fear. Accusers describe intimidation, career threats, and legal pressure. Supporters of Will Smith say such claims are exaggerated. But entertainment history shows that silence is often purchased through power. The question isn't whether every allegation is true, but whether the system allows truth to surface without retaliation. Will Smith's image has already changed dramatically since the Oscars incident. Once seen as invincible, he now appears vulnerable to scrutiny. Critics argue that this vulnerability allowed older allegations to resurface with credibility they once lacked. Whether or not wrongdoing is ever proven, perception alone has consequences. In Hollywood, image is currency, and cracks rarely disappear. What comes next for the industry? The controversy surrounding Will Smith, Bryshire Gray, and August Alsina reflects a larger issue: how mentorship operates in entertainment. Without transparency, guidance can become manipulation. Without accountability, power can become predatory. These stories force uncomfortable conversations about consent, influence, and the cost of ambition. At this moment, nothing discussed remains legally proven. These are allegations, patterns, and testimonies, not verdicts. But history shows that repeated warnings rarely appear without reason. Whether this story ends in silence or accountability depends on how seriously audiences demand transparency from those they idolize. For now, the questions remain unanswered, and the industry watches carefully, aware that the next revelation may already be waiting to surface.